Hello everyone, in today's video I am going to present the GMFCS scale E&R, that is the Gross Motor Function Classification System, extended and revised. This scale is a very important one. This scale places a CP child in different levels by their gross motor function skills. So it helps with the prognosis and the management part. Now it comes as a short note in your neuro and your pediatric subjects. So without getting any delayed, let's get started with the video. Now myself is Shanglap Kundu and I have done my BPT from NILD WUHS. First, let's see what the scale is all about. The GMFCS scale for cerebral palsy child is based on self-initiated movement with the emphasis on sitting, transfers and mobility. The expanded GMFCS scale includes an age band for youth 12 to 18 years of age and emphasizes the internal classification of function and disability model. Right? The focus of GMFCS extended and revised is on determining which level best represent the child or youth's present abilities and limitations in gross motor function. Now let's check the operational definition. The first one is the body support walker. Now it is a mobility device that supports the pelvis and trunk. Physical assistant. What do you mean by that? Physical assistant is basically another person manually assists the child for movement purpose. Now there is powered mobility, which basically means the child actively controls the joystick that enables the independent mobility. Self-propels manual wheelchair. The child in this case actively uses arms and hands or feet to propel the wheels and move. Handheld mobility devices. Here the child uses canes, crutches and anterior and posterior walkers that do not support the trunk during walking. Now here are some things you need to understand. That is, the first thing is the mobility. Now the mobility here could be either dependent or independent, right? In this case, powered mobility, the mobility is independent but the child is completely dependent on the wheelchair, which is powered by some battery or something like that. Now here the mobility is independent but the child will be dependent on the wheelchair for their mobility. Now here the wheelchair is not some battery powered thing. The wheelchair will have a manual wheel and the child uses their arms to control that wheelchair. So here the child has greater hand mobility or more hand power, and here the child has less hand power, right? Now here is the body support walker. That is, the device will basically support the whole body and the walking here is very minimal, right? And in physical assistant, the child will be completely dependent, to their parents or their assistant for their mobility. Now in handheld mobility devices, it is basically more improved, rather than using a wheelchair, where the child is basically walking independently but will need some sort of help in that mobility. So the help basically comes from the canes, the crutches, the walkers, like that. We will see more about this in picture forms in the next slides. Now, here are some devices. Let's see one by one. First is the body support walker. Here you can see the child is basically standing with the help of this walker, where there is body support. That is basically it supports the thoracolumbar spine and that region to help the child stand. And the walking here is very minimum. Then comes your powered mobility. Here is basically the child is dependent on this wheelchair for their mobility, but their mobility, they are not dependent on another person for their mobility. But the thing is that it is powered, right? So there is the joystick where you can see the patient will sit here. He controls the whole wheelchair for their posture and also their mobility. Now here there will be less amount of hand function, so they uses the joystick. Now we will see the manual wheelchair here. There is a manual, wheel. There is this caster wheel. There is this armrest. So basically the child will sit here, uses his hand to push the rear wheel for their mobility. Again, here the child is not dependent for their mobility to another person, right? Now let's check the general headings for each level. Now the first is the level 5. Here the child walks without any limitations. For level 4, the child walks with some amount of limitations, right? For level 3, the child walks but he or she uses a handheld mobility device. For level 2, the child has self-mobility, but there will be limitations. The child will use some sort of powered mobility. Now for level 1, they basically are transported in a manual wheelchair. Now we will discuss the distinctions between these levels. Now distinction between levels 1 and 2. Compared with children and youth in level 1, the children and youth in level 2 will have limitations in number 1, walking long distances and balancing, and for that they may need a handheld mobility device like a crutch or a walker when first learning to walk, and they may use a wheeled mobility when traveling long distances outdoors and also in the community. They will also require the use of a ramp, railing to walk up and down stairs, and are not as capable of running and jumping as with the children and youth in level 1. Now let's see the distinction between level 2 and 3. The children and youth in level 2 will be capable of walking without a hand mobility device after age 4, although they may choose to use one at some times. But children and youth in level 3, they will need a handheld mobility device to walk indoor, and they will use a wheeled mobility while they are on the outdoors and in the community. So you can see the difference here. For level 2, they need the handheld mobility when they're outside and in the community. But for level 3, they will need the handheld mobility when they are indoors. But they will need the wheeled mobility when they're in outdoors and in the community. But for level 1, they basically don't need these handheld mobility devices because they will gradually walk without these devices, but they sometimes may need that, right? Now, distinctions between levels 3 and 4. In level 3, they can sit on their own, or they require at most limited external support to sit and are independent in standing transfers and walk with a handheld mobility device. But for level 4 child, they will sit, usually supported, but their self-mobility is limited. Now, children and youth in level 4 are more likely to be transported in a manual wheelchair, or they will use the powered mobility. Now, let's see the distinction between levels 4 and 5. The children and youth in level 5 have severe limitations in head and neck trunk control. They cannot extend their head, they cannot roll over, right? And they require extensive assisted technology and physical assistance. Now, self-mobility is achieved only if the child or youth can learn how to operate a powered wheelchair, right? So we can see the distinctions between all these levels. So you have an idea that with the increase in levels, there will be decrease in the gross motor function skills and also the decrease in their mobility. Now we will check the GMFCS scale age-wise. First, it can be measured before the second birthday, then before second and fourth birthday, then before fourth and sixth birthday, then before 6th and 12th birthday, and at last before 12th and 18th birthday. Now here you can see the scale ends at the 12th birthday. Why is that? Now CP basically considered as a pediatric case, and the pediatric age limit is basically 18 in case of USA, right? So the scale is basically up to that year of age. Now here I marked this with blue background because there are so many GMFCS measurements, but it is not possible to discuss everything in this video. So what I have done is I mentioned this only, that is before 6th and 12th birthday, and you can write this also for your examination purpose because this is the most important among all this, right? And if you want to know about each and every year how the GMFCS scale is basically counts the gross motor function limitations of a child, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel where I have already given the GMFCS scale in details and also the age-wise measurements, right? So let's see what are the GMFCS level in this 6th and 12th birthday. Now is the level 1, right? I already mentioned in previous slide then in level 1 the child can walk without any limitations. Now here is the picture and it says a lot. Let's see what are the things the child can do in level 1. The first thing is that child will walk at home, school, outdoors and in community, right? So the child will basically don't need a walker or any handheld mobility devices for indoor and outdoor purposes, but they may need it sometimes when learning all those things. Second, they can climb stairs without the use of a railing. Children perform gross motor skills, that is running, jumping, but the coordination and the balance are limited. Now level 2. Here the child can walk, but there will be some limitations. Let's see. Here is the picture and it says a lot. First, the children walk in most settings and climb stairs holding the railing, right? So they will need some sort of assistance. Then they may experience difficulty walking long distances and balancing on an uneven terrain, inclines, in crowded areas or in confined spaces. So they will basically have the lack of balance in those areas. So they will need some sort of mobility devices, right? Children may walk with physical assistance, a handheld mobility device or used wheel mobility over long distances. Children have only minimal ability to perform gross motor skills such as running and jumping. Now let's see what level 3 says. Here is the picture and here you can see the child is basically walking with the help of a walker in the indoor and with some mobility devices like manual wheelchair for outdoors, right? So let's see what this says. Children walk using a handheld mobility device in most indoor settings, right? They may climb stairs holding onto a railing, but they will require supervision or assistance. The children use wheeled mobility when traveling long distances and may self-propel for shorter distances. So their hand activities are overall good, we will say, right? Now let's see for GMFCS level 4. Here you can see the child will basically be dependent on their caregiver and they're basically wheelchair bound, right? So let's see. The children use methods of mobility that require physical assistance or powered mobility in most of the settings. They may walk for short distances at home with physical assistance or use powered mobility or a body support walker when positioned. At school, outdoors and in the community, children are transported in a manual wheelchair or use powered mobility, right? So let's see what GMFCS level 5 says. Here is the picture. Now here you can see child are transported in a manual wheelchair in all of the settings. They don't have a proper neck control also, right? Children are limited in their ability to maintain anti-gravity head and trunk postures and control leg and arm movement. So this is the most terrible thing, right? They are completely dependent of their caregiver. Okay. Okay, the takeaway message. Okay, so the GMFCS scale is basically a scale which determines the level of the child basically on their gross motor function skill. Now here you can see the level 5 means the child is terribly dependent on their caregiver, or basically they can do nothing. Whereas where you can see level 1, the child is basically independent, they can do most of the things, they don't need any sort of assistance. Yes, they will require some help or something like that, devices or something, when they're learning the process, but with a proper learning and with proper guidance, the child can ultimately do that. Now when you can see a child coming to you with let's suppose GMFCS scale level 4, now what you can expect? Can you expect the child, or you can tell their parents that they can do skills like they can walk, they can run or something like that? No, you cannot just say that, because the child is dependent very much. So what you can do, you can basically keep the child more mobile, or you can give more mobility exercises, or you can control the abnormal postures or something like that. But you cannot take the child from a level 4 to a level 1, right? You can basically take them into level 3 or at most level 2, but not level 1. So these will keep you in check what should be your goal and where you can reach with the child, right? So keep that in mind, and this is all for your short note purpose, and I think you have learned a lot. And if I have mistaken somewhere, please let me know. There is this comment box below, and you can also subscribe to my Telegram channel for more details. Link will be given in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you everyone, and please subscribe and share. Okay, so see you in the next video, guys.